In a small, quiet town, wrapped gently by the arms of an ancient forest, there lived an older man named Elias. Elias was known by the town for two things: his beautiful, sprawling garden that bloomed throughout the year, and his undying love for his wife, Mirabelle. They had spent nearly 5 decades side by side, weathering the ups and downs of life with the kind of grace that inspired sonnets and songs. But as the wheel of time turned, it claimed Mirabelle first. Her health, which had flickered like a candle in the wind during her last years, finally snuffed out on a rainy spring morning. Elias found himself alone, tending to the garden that had been their labor of love. With each flower he pruned and every weed he plucked, Elias felt as if he was keeping a part of Mirabelle alive with him. The first year without Mirabelle was the hardest. Elias barely spoke, his voice becoming as rare as the blooms of winter jasmine in his garden. His only solace was in the soil, among the petals and leaves that held the essence of his wife's passion and joy. As time trudged on, a peculiar friendship blossomed between Elias and a young girl named Lily. Lily was a curious child with an insatiable appetite for stories and love for everything green and growing. She reminded Elias painfully of Mirabelle. Gradually, drawn by her enthusiasm and his loneliness, Elias began to teach Lily how to care for the garden. Lily absorbed every lesson with fervor, and under her care, the garden flourished even more. Her laughter began to fill the silent spaces of Elias's home, bringing with it a fresh breeze of life. Elias taught her about patience and love, how to nurture a plant from seed to bloom, and how even the most wilted stem could revive with enough care. But remember, he would often say, every plant and every person has their time. We must appreciate them while they are here, not mourn their loss too soon. Years rolled by, and the seasons changed as they always did. Lily grew into a bright and talented young woman, her passion for plants driving her to pursue botany in college. The day she left for university was bittersweet for Elias. He was proud, incredibly so, but her departure left a silence in his home that reminded him too much of Mirabelle's passing. One winter, after several years had passed, Lily returned to visit Elias. She found him in the garden, as she had expected, but he was sitting quietly on a bench, not tending to the plants as usual. With a start, she realized Elias was frail, thinner than she remembered. His spirit seemed to have dimmed. "Elias," Lily said gently, sitting beside him, "the garden looks different." Elias smiled softly, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's time I let things go, Lily. I'm tired, and I've kept things alive in memory of her for too long. It's time to let nature take its course." But Lily wasn't ready to let go. "Let me help. We can prune and plant anew. Spring is coming." Elias shook his head. "No, dear. It's all right. I've realized something important. Holding on too tightly to the past can prevent us from seeing the beauty in the now. This garden was our past, and it's beautiful, but it's time I prepare for my own winter. You need to bloom in your own garden now." Lily, though heartbroken, understood. She spent one last season with Elias, learning everything he had left to teach, soaking in his stories and wisdom. When Elias finally passed, peacefully in his sleep, the garden was blooming wildly, untamed and beautiful in its natural chaos. From Elias, Lily learned the beauty of letting things grow and letting them go. She carried this lesson with her as she traveled the world, teaching and learning about plants, always nurturing, always loving, but never clinging too tightly. At every lecture she gave, she ended with a quote that Elias had lived by. "The true art of life is not in planting gardens that remain unchanged through seasons, but in loving each leaf, each flower anew, and knowing when to let the soil rest." Elias's garden was left as it was, a wild patch of beauty in the town, a reminder that life in all its phases had its own plans and paths. And sometimes, the most loving thing we can do is simply to appreciate it as it comes and goes.